So she's selling computers and earning 5% commission on her sales. Do you guys know what commission is? Commission is a percentage of money you make if you sell something for a company. It's an incentive to try and sell more stuff. She's getting 5% commission on the sales. So whenever she sells a computer, she gets 5% of whatever the computer costs of the sales. So they've already given us the equation. C equals 0.05. That's 5%. She gets 5% of the sales, so 0.05. And what variable did they use to represent her sales? S. So instead of writing times S, we just write 0.05 S. Okay? So we're trying to calculate her commission. How much commission does she make? Well, it depends on how much she sells. So let's answer one right now. If she sells, we're going to make a table of values, okay? What are we relating? What's the relationship? We're relating what? Look at the two variables in the equation. What does S represent? Sales. Is that independent or dependent? Does your commission depend on how much you sell? So commission would be dependent. That would be our Y. And sales would be our X, right? Sales is independent. I want you to copy the table because you're going to be creating a table. If she sells nothing, does she make any commission? So is this going to be direct or partial? Direct. Your commission is directly related to the sales. Automatically, you know when you graph this, where's the graph going to start? At the origin. Okay, at 0, 0. So we're going to graph it after. I'm going to give you the amount for sales. We're going to count by 1,000, okay? Because computers cost a lot of money. If she sells $1,000 worth of computers, I'll do the first one with you, then you can fill in the rest. We're going to calculate the commission. So we're going to use this formula, and we're going to plug in the sales each time, right? We get 5% of the sales. So I want to know what's the commission equal to, what's commission, if she sells $1,000. So what's 0.05 times 1,000? 50, good. In the table, we're gonna fill in the rest. I want you to calculate all the way up to 8,000, okay? What do you notice is happening every time we increase the sales by 1,000, you get $50 more, excellent. It's going up $50 for every $1,000 in sales. So if you notice the pattern, you didn't even have to use a calculator. You can just fill in the table. So what is my rise? What is this going up by? Remember, commission is going to be graphed on the y-axis, and sales is graphed on the x-axis. Every time you increase your sales by 1,000, what does the commission increase by? What does it go up by? It goes up by 50. What's the run? Over 1,000, right? It goes, look at your Y and your X. Rise is always Y, run is always X. So look here, it goes up by 50, and this goes up by 1,000. So the rise is 50 and the run is 1,000. Divide that. What's 50 divided by 1,000? What's 50 divided by 1,000? 0.05. Do you notice? Do you notice something here? Look here. The rise was, the slope was 0.05, and in my equation I had 0.05 next to the variable. Remember we talked about this? That's the rate of change, and that's the slope. Okay, so we've made the table. I want you to graph it now, and then you're gonna answer these questions in your groups. Okay? Okay, so you should have on the x-axis, you are graphing the sales, And on the y-axis, you're graphing the commission, the amount of commission earned. We talked about this. We start at 0, 0. First point, if she sells $1,000 worth of computers, she makes $50. And as you can see, it is increasing by the same amount every single time. So should this relationship be linear? Is it linear? Is it direct or partial? Okay, so you should have a proper scale. I increased by 1,000 on my x-axis, and I increased by 50 for my y-axis. So look here, I skipped 2 squares to put my first point. So then I skipped another 2 squares to put the next point, and I'm counting by 50s. Be consistent. Here, I skipped 2 squares just because I wanted more space on my graph, and I counted by 1,000. So if I'm skipping 2 squares at the beginning, I have to always skip 2 squares. Please make sure your scale is accurate and you are skip counting by the same amount every single time, okay? Question C said, what's his commission? Look here, please. If he sells $8,000. So I'm going to look at my graph, and sales is on the which axis, X or Y? On the x-axis. So right here is sales. Everyone look here. $8,000. I'm using the graph to figure out what would his commission be. So I'm going to go across to see where the commission is. What is it? For $8,000, what is his commission? $400. So that's the answer for C. I is 400. And, sorry, that's 1. Number 2. If he earns $200 in commission, now where am I going to start? On the X or the Y-axis? $200 in commission. Where's commission? X or Y? Y. Right here. If he earns, look here please. If he earns $200 in commission, let's see what his sales would be. Stop when you get to the line. And go down. $4,000. Good. Now, question D says, suppose Sam's commission increases to 10%. So now his boss says, you know what, you've been doing a great job. I'm going to give you 10% now commission every time you sell something. How would the graph change? How would the graph look different? If his commission increased and he gets more money, how would the graph change? Raise your hand. Yes. The points would be higher. Excellent. Copy that down. The points would be higher. And do you think the slope, the rate of change would be, the slope would be steeper? Would it be steeper graph or would it be less steep? It would be steeper. Excellent. So we'd say it would be steeper. If his commission decreased to 3%, so obviously how would the graph look then if it decreased? It would be less steep. And the points would be higher or lower? Lower.